She never spoke a word of sympathy when the phone rang that evening. I already knew it wasn't going to be good news. My estranged father had been in and out of my life for years, a ghost who reappeared only in fragments, at family gatherings or in whispers passed along by relatives. But the message I received was heavier than anything before. His wife had lost her pregnancy. A life that hadn't even begun had already slipped away, and though my relationship with him was complicated, I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me. The family group chat exploded with condolences. Cousins, distant aunts, people who barely even knew his wife offered kind words, fragile attempts to soothe a wound that could never really heal. Everyone except her. She. The person I trusted the most. The one who had seen me cry about the void my father left behind. The one who had once promised me that loyalty, above all, was sacred. When I looked at the silence she left behind, I couldn't believe it. No message, no call, not even a single line acknowledging what had happened. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she hadn't seen the news. Maybe she was busy. But then, scrolling further, I saw her active online, posting photos, laughing in comments, her life unfolding publicly as though nothing tragic had happened within mine. The betrayal wasn't in what she did. It was in what she didn't do. No sympathy. No gesture. Not even the most hollow phrase of comfort. It was as if my pain, my family's pain, didn't exist in her world. That night I lay awake, thinking back to the times I had defended her, to the times when others had questioned her coldness and I had insisted they were wrong. I remembered when she had whispered secrets into my ear about loyalty, how she despised people who pretended to care just for appearances. I believed her. I believed in her. And now, here she was revealing herself through her silence. The silence was a message, louder than words, sharper than a knife. It told me I didn't matter, that my grief was irrelevant, that the blood tie I shared with my father, fragile and strained as it was, meant nothing to her. In that silence, the trust I had built cracked like glass. Days passed and still nothing. She watched me grow quieter. She noticed how I avoided her, but she never asked why. She never admitted the betrayal, never confessed that maybe she should have said something, anything, to prove she cared. I realized then that betrayal doesn't always come from an action, it can come from absence, from indifference, from a void where compassion should have been. And once you've seen that kind of emptiness in someone you love, you can never unsee it. Continuation, silence that cut deeper than words. The days that followed were unbearable. The news of the miscarriage lingered like a heavy storm cloud, even among family members who rarely spoke to my father. Everyone seemed shaken, carrying pieces of grief in their own way. Yet she, the one person I thought would understand how fragile my emotions were, remained silent. I waited. At first, I gave her excuses in my mind. Maybe she doesn't know what to say. Maybe she thinks reaching out will hurt more. Maybe she's waiting for the right time. But the right time never came. Instead, her life carried on with unnerving normality. She went to parties. She smiled in photos. She posted about trivial things, the new cafe she visited, the movie she watched, the compliments she got on her dress. It was as if my grief and the grief of my estranged father and his wife belonged to some alternate universe she didn't care to step into. Her silence began to feel like a deliberate choice. And that choice revealed something I never wanted to face. Maybe she enjoyed my pain. It was an ugly thought, one I tried to shake off, but it grew louder every time she ignored me. There was cruelty in that emptiness, the kind of cruelty that doesn't need sharp words or slamming doors. It thrives in the refusal to acknowledge another person's suffering. I confronted her one evening. We were sitting across from each other, the air between us heavy and still. My voice shook as I finally broke the silence. Do you realize what happened? Do you know what I've been dealing with? Her eyes flickered, but her expression remained flat, almost bored. I heard, yes. And I pushed, my chest tightening. And what? She asked, as though I were asking for something unreasonable. I felt my blood run cold. You said nothing. Not a single word. Do you know what that feels like? To be grieving. To see everyone else care except you. She crossed her arms, defensive. I didn't think it was my place. He's your father, not mine. Why should I pretend to feel something I don't? Her words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just indifference, it was detachment sharpened into cruelty. You didn't have to pretend, I whispered. All you had to do was acknowledge it. Show me you cared. Show me I mattered enough for you to care. But she didn't flinch. Her silence stretched again, suffocating, wrapping itself around me like a snake. That night I realized something chilling. She was incapable of empathy when it came to me. Her loyalty wasn't to me, despite all her promises. She had revealed herself in the most brutal way, not with betrayal in the form of lies or secrets, but betrayal in the form of absence. The days that followed became a blur of distance. I withdrew, too tired to keep pretending. She noticed, of course. She made small attempts, casual conversations, shallow jokes, but never once did she circle back to what mattered. Never once did she admit that her silence had broken something between us. And in that void, resentment began to grow. It wasn't just about the miscarriage anymore. It was about every moment she had claimed to be loyal but wasn't. Every time she had let me bleed emotionally while refusing to reach out a hand. I realized that betrayal doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, it lingers, it corrodes. And her silence had become the loudest betrayal of all. Weeks later, when my father's wife quietly slipped back into her routines, carrying invisible scars no one could see, I thought about how fragile life was, how much loss could reshape people. I thought about how even in tragedy, people reveal who they truly are. And she had revealed herself. Not through words, but through silence. Not through cruelty, but through indifference. And once you see someone's true nature in the face of your pain, you can never unsee it. Continuation, when silence becomes the loudest lie. I tried to forgive her, at least in the beginning. Forgiveness, after all, was what people preached in moments of loss. Don't hold grudges, they said. People grieve in their own ways. But the problem was she hadn't grieved at all. She hadn't even acknowledged that grief existed. Instead, she carried on as if my life's darkest moment was irrelevant. And that hurt more than anything my estranged father had ever done. His absence was predictable, even expected. But hers was a betrayal wrapped in stillness, in that cruel void where comfort should have been. Weeks bled into months, and the distance between us stretched like a chasm. I stopped telling her about my father. I stopped expecting compassion. I stopped hoping she would ever wake up one morning and finally realize how deeply she had cut me. But silence doesn't stay silent forever. It festers. It builds pressure, waiting for the moment to explode. That moment came late one evening. We were sitting in the same room, but it felt like an ocean separated us. I had been quiet all day, and she finally asked, "Why are you still acting like this?" Her voice carried irritation, not concern. Like what? I asked flatly. Cold, distant. Punishing me with this attitude. I stared at her, stunned by her words. Punishing. As if my pain, my withdrawal, was nothing but some childish act of spite. Finally, I snapped. You think this is punishment? Do you even realize what you did, or rather, what you didn't do? My voice cracked, trembling with months of suppressed rage. When I lost something, when my family lost something, when my father's wife lost the child she carried, you said nothing. Not a word. Do you have any idea how that felt? To watch you ignore it, as if my grief wasn't even worth your time. She didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed, lips pressing into a thin line. I told you before, it wasn't my business. I didn't want to be fake. I didn't want to say empty words just because everyone else did. But you weren't being honest, I shot back. You were being cruel. You chose silence, and in doing that, you chose betrayal. The room fell into a suffocating stillness. She crossed her arms, turned her face away, and muttered, "If that's betrayal to you, maybe you're too sensitive." That was it. The final crack in the glass. For years, I had defended her. For years, I had excused the small cuts, the sharp edges, the moments when her loyalty wavered. But this was proof that she didn't fail me by accident, she failed me by choice. And choices have consequences. That night, I made mine. I stopped confiding in her. I stopped waiting for her care. I began to rebuild my walls, brick by brick, until the bond we once had was reduced to rubble. She noticed, of course. She asked why I no longer laughed at her jokes, why my texts grew shorter, why I no longer sought her advice. But she never connected it back to her silence, to that empty void where compassion should have been. And I never explained again. Because once someone shows you that your pain means nothing to them, you don't give them the privilege of hurting you twice. Months later, when my father called unexpectedly, his voice tired, older, softer than I remembered, he asked if I was okay. It was a rare moment of tenderness between us, fragile and fleeting. And as I listened to him, I realized something cruelly ironic. Even he, the man who had abandoned me for years, had spoken more sympathy about my loss than she ever did. That realization broke me in a new way. I had always thought betrayal came from knives in the back, from lies, from secrets. But I learned it can come from something quieter, sharper, a silence that echoes louder than any scream. She never said a word of sympathy, and that silence became her truest confession. From that day forward, I stopped waiting for her words. I stopped waiting for her to care. Instead, I carried the weight of her betrayal as a reminder that sometimes the cruelest people aren't the ones who say the wrong thing, but the ones who say nothing at all. And though she remains in my life, in the shadows of daily routines, I know one thing with certainty: our bond died the moment she chose silence over compassion. Her betrayal didn't end with her words. It began with her silence.